StrayAllDay.com.
To the show where you learn at this point to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. What is that? That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is why people never change. Before we get into why people never change, it's going to be remind everybody. I send out a text message every morning, free of charge, to everybody in my text community. This message is guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day. So, since you do want to be those things, you want to get this text. Here's what you do to get it. Text me right now. My number 305-384-6894. And every morning when the daily motivation text comes out, that's what it's called, daily motivation, you'll be getting that message straight to your phone, just like any normal text message. And that number, again, 305-384-6894, is listed down below in the description if you didn't catch it already. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That is the only place to work with me directly. A lot of people ask me, Dre, do you offer any kind of coaching? Is there any way I can work with you directly? Any way I can talk to you on a regular basis? Answer is yes. And the way to do all of those things, there's one way to do it, is to join Work on Your Game University. The way that you can get everything you need to get started in the university is by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. See how easy we make this stuff? Workonyourgameuniversity.com. Link is down below in the description, as well as a number to get into my daily motivation texting community. Now, getting into the topic, why people never change. If you listen to this show enough, you have heard me over and over again assert that many people never change in life. I've talked about this from several different angles. Today, I'm going to talk about it from another angle. And I've been adamant about this. And so today, what I'm going to do is make an episode that puts all of the reasons why that I have stressed over and over again. I'm going to put all of those into one topic here today, so that anytime anybody ever asks me about this again, I can just point them to this one episode. If you listen to this show enough, the points I'm going to share here today are things that you may have heard me say at different times and different points on the subject of, within the context of different conversations, but I want them all to be in one neat, tidy place where you can always find it. That'll be this episode. So as a note, let me not remind you, but inform you that I will probably add to this list. So this may end up being a part one. I'm not putting this as a part one right now because I don't have a part two prepared, but I will probably add to this list sometime in the future. So this may end up becoming just part one of a series on why people don't change, because I'm just throwing these out as a primer in some basic reasons. What I may consider basic, you may not consider them basic if you never thought about it from this angle, which you may not have. I mean, that's why I'm recording this show. And I will be adding to this list probably, though, as to why people don't change. Because there's more than just these reasons why people don't change. There's a myriad of reasons why they don't change. But I want to give you the baseline reasons, the basic reasons here today. Point number one, topic once again, why people never change. Number one reason, people don't change. These are not necessarily in any particular order, but this one might be number one. Even if I did put them in order, this might be number one. Number one reason is the law of inertia. I did a whole episode on the law of inertia in episode 2466. If you don't know what the law of inertia is, let me state it for you, and then I'll give you the plain language version of the law. First, let me give you the scientific definition of the law. It states that an object in motion shall remain in motion, and an object not in motion shall remain not in motion until or unless acted upon by an outside force. That is what the law of inertia states. Let me give it to you in plain language. An object in motion that remains in motion is also known as momentum. All of you are familiar with that term. An object not in motion that remains not in motion is also known as stagnation. All of you are familiar with that term. Those are two sides of the same coin called inertia. That's what the law of inertia is. So all of you have used the words momentum and stagnation before, even though you may not use the word inertia. That's what it is, okay? The reason why many people never change is because it is more comfortable to stay the same than it is to do something different, right? Because there's a law, a scientific law, that says it's easier to stay in the same state that you're already in. So if you're doing something, it's easier to keep doing it. If you're doing nothing, it's easier to keep doing nothing. Simple as that. You don't need an outside force to act upon you for you to stay in the same state that you're already in. If you already do something all the time as a habit, nothing needs to happen to you for you to keep doing it, because you'll just keep doing it. All right, it's a habit. That's why you keep doing it over and over again. And if you don't have anything going on and you're doing a whole lot of nothing, You don't need anything to act upon you for you to keep doing that nothing. The only time you need some force to act upon you is when you want to change the process of what you have. So if you're doing nothing, you want to do something, you need some outside force. If you're doing something and you want to stop doing that something and do less of that thing, like let's say, for example, you're eating too much, or you're taking drugs that you shouldn't be taking, or you're drinking too much, or you're gambling away all your money, you need something to stop the momentum of that energy that's not going the way you want it to go. So understand that momentum doesn't always mean something that you want. Momentum can be something that you don't want. And stagnation also can be something that you do want. Maybe you want to be stagnant in that, you go to bed every night and lay down and you sleep for 9 hours instead of being awake and only getting 5 hours of sleep and then crashing in the middle of the day the next day when you're at work. So momentum and stagnation are not necessarily good or bad. They just are. And depending on where you're getting that momentum and stagnation, then you can deem them to be what you want or what you don't want based on what your goals are. So I want to make sure I'm making that note here. So this is why you can rest assured knowing that the people that you went to high school with, for example, if you're over the age of, let's say 25, so they've had a few years of seasoning, everybody you went to school with, you're 25 or older. People you went to high school with are pretty much the same person now that they were when you graduated. It doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. I mean, hey, maybe they were great people then, they're still great people now. They just got older and uglier. All right, that's pretty much what happens, especially after the age of 35. All right, change is not always necessarily hard, but it's relatively hard. Change is relatively hard, meaning it is harder to change than it is to stay the same. All right, that's what relatively means. It's harder than the alternative. And human beings, all of us, are wired for what we call laziness, or in a softer way of saying it is the conservation of energy, which is the same thing. I'm calling it laziness just so you all understand it, but the conservation of energy means we want to use as little energy as possible. We're designed to conserve our energy because it dates back to the caveman days, so to speak, when we needed to conserve our energy for the off chance that a saber-toothed tiger or a rival caveman might come after us, threaten our home, threaten our children, threaten our lives. So we need to conserve our energy just in case we need to use it in a short burst every now and then. This is one of the justifications or explanations you'll hear for people who like to do HIIT workouts, which stands for HIIT with 2 I's, stands for high intensity interval training. And they'll tell you, hey, back in the caveman days, this is what the cavemen did. They didn't run for 8 miles straight at a steady pace or to run a marathon. Most of the time they saved their energy and they would use their energy in very short bursts. If they had to sprint, if they had to go chase down their food, if they had to run away from an enemy, if they had to fight a rival caveman, they would use their energy in bursts. And that they explain, somebody who's living in 2023 would explain, well, this is why, hey, you can do this energy. It takes you back to your caveman roots. Now, why you want to go back to your caveman roots in 2023, I don't quite know, but this is one of the explanations that you'll hear people give for this type of workout, or also you hear people give this explanation for the paleo eating lifestyle. Not that these things are necessarily bad things to do, but this is the explanation that sometimes people give as if doing this is gonna, is it gonna take you back to being a caveman? I don't understand why people use this explanation, but they do. I've heard it more than once. So anyway, the whole point being, we are always looking to conserve energy as human beings. That's still a fact of us being human. So if we can conserve energy by staying the same, we usually do. All right, this is why the law of inertia is not a theory. It is not a choice of inertia. It's a law of inertia. It is just a human nature law that we usually conserve energy by continually doing what we're already doing. This is why I talk about in my book, Work on Your Game, which you can see here over my shoulder if you're watching this on video. Your habits are your employees. They are creating your life. Your habits are basically the things that you are unconsciously doing over and over and over again. They could either be hurting you or they could be helping you. This is why you need to look at your habits as if they were your staff working for you, and that they're on your payroll, and that any employee who's not doing the job that you want them to do, you need to fire them or you need to help them adjust how they're doing their job. Otherwise, they're hurting you and costing you money. Everybody understand this metaphor here about how your habits are your employees and they're working for you? This is all part of the law of inertia. This is just an extended explanation of how it works. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is why people never change. Number 2, change requires dropping old habits and getting out of the space that you have always been in. This is why people don't do it. Dropping a habit and getting it out of the space that you've been in order to get into a new space takes a significant amount of effort, relatively speaking. Relative to not changing, it takes a whole lot of energy to change, because it doesn't take any energy to stay the same. It takes a lot of energy to do something different. Remember that habits control 85% of our thoughts and our actions. They are unconscious and they happen involuntarily, which allows us to conserve energy both mentally and physically. This is why habits are what they are. The reason why habits control all of us as human beings is because they allow us to conserve energy, because we don't have to think about what we're doing. We don't have to be conscious about it. It allows us to save brain power and even physical power. We do things habitually and it doesn't take as much physical energy to do it because we're not really thinking about it. Everybody's familiar with the term mind over matter. And one of the things that means is that when you are doing things that are habitual for you, you do them over and over again physically, it doesn't really feel as taxing as when you're doing something that you have to consciously think about simply because you're not thinking about it. All right, the brain controls the signal that your muscles, the brain controls how it receives or does not receive the signals from your body that there is fatigue happening. So this is how you could be very physically fatigued, or let's just say, let me not say you're fatigued. Let's say this. Let's say you've been doing a whole lot of workouts every single day and not really getting a ton of rest time, but for whatever reason, you are fully mentally activated and engaged and motivated for this particular workout today. Your body, your brain rather, may never transmit to you the signal that the body is tired, even though the body has not gotten any quality rest over the last 10 days, simply because you're so physically and mentally or emotionally and mentally activated for the workout you're doing today that it doesn't even matter. You basically are having an out-of-body experience, for lack of a better term, because you are so locked in on what you're doing. So the body does have fatigue. The muscles do feel fatigue, but the signal never gets to the brain, and the brain never gives a signal to your conscious mind that you're feeling that fatigue, simply because you allow getting into that state of flow, which is getting into the unconscious momentum, part of inertia, that allows you to basically turn off any messages that the body may be sending. This is how an athlete, any of you who plays or has played a sport, you could be in a situation where you're physically injured and the body is not in a good space and it may need some repair, it may need some work done on it because of the physical injury that you have. But if you get yourself in that mental zone, you can overpower the signal of the injury coming from your knee or your back or your hip, still perform at a higher level, and then when it's over, when you don't need that energy anymore, you get out of that state of flow, then you start to feel the pain of what you just did. So this is about getting into that flow state, or some people call it getting into the zone, but they are, again, two sides of the same coin. So habits are unconscious, they're involuntary, they allow us to conserve energy. In order to change, though, that requires to get our conscious minds involved, meaning we got to think about what we're doing consciously, and thinking itself is work. Thinking on it alone is work. When you have to consciously think about what you're doing, that takes a certain amount of mental juice from you. And it requires that you take action that is outside of your normal habitual patterns, because if it was part of your normal habitual pattern, well, you don't have to think about it, you just let it happen. But if it's outside of that normal habitual pattern, you got to think about it, and that can be uncomfortable and definitely not always easy. So if you, for example, commute to work every day, you may have done it enough that there are days that you get to work and you don't even remember the process of traveling there. And if you had a day like that, let's say recently, you got to work and you don't even remember the process of driving to work or getting in your car or backing out of your driveway, you don't even remember it because you've done it so many times that the brain pretty much just deletes the experience in your mind, because there's nothing about it that is necessary to be remembered, because it's the same thing you did 1,000 other times already. But if I was to have you take a completely different route to get to work tomorrow, let's say I had you go, instead of leaving your driveway and turning left, instead you turn right and you went a whole different route to get there, you would remember all of it, at least for a day or two, simply because I took you out of your habitual pattern. Simply because I had you do something other than what you normally do. I took you out of that habitual pattern. All of a sudden, you become a lot more aware of what's going on. That's what happens when we get out of our habitual patterns. Our brains snap to attention because we're doing something different than what we had done before. So any of you who's in a situation where you feel like you're kind of getting into a mental rut and you're getting into this mental space of everything just seems the same over and over again every single day, just change up something in your pattern. This will help you a lot very easily. Just change something up in your pattern and because you change something up in your pattern, a better way of saying this, you will snap to attention and notice things that you otherwise had not noticed, simply because breaking your pattern causes your conscious mind to wake up and notice every little detail of what's happening. Now, if you do the same thing over and over again, the conscious mind, realizing that you've done this before, says, I don't need to record this because I've already seen it before. I'll give you an example of this that is a metaphorical example. When I was making my basketball videos, basketball drill videos that first got my name out there on the internet some 10 plus years ago, I realized early on that if I was going to put out new material every single day, I couldn't just record the normal workouts that I would do if there had not been a camera in the gym. Because if I had done that, well, people would have got bored with me, because I did a lot of the same stuff over and over again every single day. I did the same warm-ups, the same drills, same stuff to work on my handle. I would shoot shots from the same spot. It was a lot of similarities from workout 1 to 2 to 3 to 37 to 54 to 650. There's a lot of similar things that I did in every single workout. However, I realized that if I was going to put out new material every day, I was going to have to take at least some portion of my workout every single day and do something that was a little bit different each time, because that is the material that I could put out so that I could show players, hey, here's a whole variety of different ways that you can practice, different things that I can do, aside from just the same boilerplate material that I did every day. Because there was some boilerplate stuff that I always did, I didn't always record it, because sometimes I'd be about to record something and I say, well, I've already done this 30 times. I got it on camera 30 times. What's the point of recording it time number 31, 32, 33? I'm probably not even going to put that out because people have already seen me do it. So you know what? I'm not even going to record that one, but I will record this part over here when I'm doing something that's actually different than what I normally do. And that would help me get out of it's not like I would get into a mental rut, because I understood exactly what I was doing. Again, that's what I'm saying. This is a metaphorical, rough example. But doing the different things gave me an opportunity to put out different material, so that a basketball player who was watching me back then could say, wow, this guy does all these different things. But there was a whole lot of similarities between workout 1 and workout 12. You just didn't see them because I didn't put those out, because I understood, well, who wants to see me do the same thing every single time? Probably nobody. So this is the point. The mental energy you have to use on that day when you do something different, when you take a different route, it takes some of that mental energy away from what you could have it for the rest of the day. So let me break this down and say it again. Let me make sure I'm being more concise here. If I take you out of your habitual pattern, you'll remember more of what you did, because your conscious mind has to get involved, because you got taken out of your unconscious process. The mental energy you use on the day when you get out of your pattern, it takes some of that mental energy away from what you could have it for the rest of the day. This is why habits are so valuable for people, because a lot of times there's a big percentage of what we do over the course of a day is the same stuff every time. So we might as well get into a pattern and a process for that, so we can save our energy for the stuff that isn't the same every day. All right, and the same thing happens, again, whenever you decide or you are forced to make a change. That change period takes up brain energy and focus and attention, because you have to focus and pay attention to this new situation that you put yourself in, as opposed to being unconsciously doing the same stuff over and over again, operating by pattern. And there are pros and cons to both sides. This depends on how and when you would use each one. So when I was making my basketball material back in the days, there were part of my workout was the same stuff the same way every time, and part of my workout was doing new stuff. So it kind of served me in both ways, because as an athlete there are a whole lot of routines that I wanted to get into when it came to practicing and working on my game. At the same time, I wanted to have at least some variety sprinkled in, which would keep me mentally intact, keep me mentally focused, and it would allow me to serve my audience, because I wanted to show them a whole bunch of different things, which allowed me to then continue to build my brand, start selling products, and etc. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why most people never change. Point number 3. You'd have to admit that your current process is not working. In order for you to make a change, in order for you to even try to initiate change, the only reason you would try to make a change is because something that you're doing right now is not getting you the outcome that you want. Otherwise, you'd be changing just for the sake of changing, which is a bad idea. So any of you who doesn't have something in your process that's not working, if everything in your process is working the way you want it to, don't change anything. Just keep following that formula for as long as it lasts. But if you are looking to make change right now, that must be because something that you're doing is not getting you the outcome that you want. You had to admit that, at least to yourself, in order to even begin thinking about making real change, to be serious about it. Only reason anybody ever changes is because whatever it is that they're doing is not working in some way. And working is relative. Working just depends on what you want the outcome to be. And some human beings can become a little bit too embarrassed. Some get a little bit too arrogant. Some are too proud to admit that whatever they've been doing is just not producing the desired result. I mean, this is the reason why anybody changes, because they're not getting the outcome that they want. If everything that we're doing right now was actually working, there'd be no need for change. If everyone who's listening to me right now, everything you did was working, what do you need change for? You don't need to change anything. Just keep doing the same stuff. You think about the last time you admitted to someone that something you were doing was not working. When's the last time that was? You just admitted to someone, look, I'm doing this thing and I'm putting the time and I'm putting the effort in, at least you think you are. This is just not working. And when's the last time you admitted that to somebody? I want you to think about the energy you had when you said it. Think about the way you talked about it. Think about how you felt while admitting such a thing. It's almost like a sense of shame that a lot of people have when they admit that something is not working. And I always wonder why. And here's the answer I came up with. This is an interesting question I could do a whole episode on, or maybe even write a whole book on, something many others have already done. As adults, we should reframe our relationship with admittance that something's not working, instead of having it as a point of shame or feeling bad for ourselves or embarrassment. We should look at it as something to actually be happy and feel gratitude about. Why? Because identifying that something's not working gives us an opportunity to do things better and to move ourselves into a better place subsequently. It's not going to put us in a place where we need to be shameful or beat ourselves up or feel bad about the past. But again, this all depends on how you decide to frame the conversation that you're having with yourself. If you didn't listen to my episodes on framing in conversations, listen to episodes 2400 and 2401. With all that said, let's recap today's class, which is why people never change. You heard me talk about this often. I'm going to put all of this into one space so that everybody understands why other people are not changing the way that maybe you would hope that they did or you would want them to. Number one, the law of inertia. An object in motion shall remain in motion. An object not in motion shall remain not in motion until or unless acted upon by an outside force. This is the reason why many people say the same, simply because the law of inertia says it's much easier to just stay where you are than it is to change and do something different. Number two, change requires dropping old habits and getting out of the space that you have always been in. Remember that habits control 85% of our thoughts and 85% of our actions. They are unconscious and they happen involuntarily, which allows us to conserve energy both mentally and physically. To change, on the other hand, requires to get our conscious minds involved, and thinking in itself is work. Number three, you have to admit that your current process is not working, which is a challenge that many people have. Some people are too embarrassed to admit their process is not working. Some people are too arrogant to admit that their process is not working, and some people are too oblivious to admit, because they can't admit something they don't even realize. They don't even realize that their process is not working. They're oblivious to this truth, therefore they can't possibly admit it because they don't even know about it. You can't admit something you don't know about. So if everything that we're doing right now was working, there'd be no need for change at all. So if you're listening to this episode, you know there's something in your life that needs to change on some level. Question is, are you going to take the steps necessary to actually allow that change in, to give that change some space to occur? Again, for humans, a lot of times it feels like a sense of shame for us to even admit that something we're doing is not working. I'm suggesting that you reframe it to a feeling of happiness and gratitude, because if you point out something that's not working, you can be happy with the fact that at least now you can do something about it and change it and maybe put yourself in a place where things are working. But if you don't admit that something's not working, then you probably will just keep doing the same thing that doesn't work, and time goes by and eventually you run out of time and you still haven't gotten the outcome that you wanted. And remember that we're in a performance and results-based business, folks, so why would you want to do business that way? I wouldn't see why anybody would want to, but if any of you have a good reason why, you can let me know. Let me tell you where. First of all, text me. Let me know the best insight you got from today's class. My number is 305-384-6894. Second, Work on Your Game University. That is where you get to work with me directly. It's the only place you can be coached by me. The way to get started, get all the information, get the links, all of that stuff is go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.